Welcome to this segment of the Sales Growth Virtual Summit. I'm Lisa Dennis, President of Knowledge and Associates and Value Proposition Expert. And you guessed it, we're talking about value propositions, my favorite topic. I think it's one of those things that we as salespeople really need to get good at, and it's not always the easiest thing in the world. I think the other thing is that we're always trying to go for this short, sweet, punchy value prop statement, and it's really hard to find that if you start trying to go short, right? Brainstorming a one-line value prop rarely results in a truly buyer-focused message. And we want to make sure that we can pull that value prop like a thread through all of our conversations, our presentations, and it would be really nice if it actually plugged into and fit with the marketing messaging that your buyers already consumed before they even talk to you. So we're going to learn the steps that will ensure that your value prop will serve your buyers. And we're going to talk about some things around how to better define the buyer objective statement, because I think every value prop should have at least a section on the front end that addresses the buyer directly about their issues, then some tips for a tight offer statement, and then less is more differentiation. And then how do I back up my value prop once I get it done? Value drivers, quantification, and proof. So let's just go through this and see where we end up. So first I want to talk about the question that you're trying to answer when you're putting together this value prop statement. Most of us are answering this very basic question, and quite frankly, it's a 101 question. Why should I, your buyer, buy your product or service? Honestly, your buyers are really sophisticated and they're kind of jaded too. They've heard it all, and a lot of it sounds the same. And so I think you really should shift the question to something that's a little bit more meaty, that your buyer's probably already thinking about when you engage with them. One way to look at it is if you know that they're also considering one or two of your competitors, then you could focus on having your value prop answer this question: why should I buy your product or service instead of your competitors? And you can go very specific if you know who they're going after. That could be an approach. The question I like the best, though, quite honestly, because I'd rather talk about myself than I'd rather talk about my own offering in the context of the buyer's values, rather than waste any airtime talking about my competitors if I don't have to, is answer this third question. Focus on a value prop that goes here. What are the most important things I, your buyer, must consider in my decision process? Because the reality is, as a buyer, I've already done a lot of research. I've already been all over your website. I have already consumed some of your content. I've probably talked to my peers. I might be looking and seeing what the industry experts are saying. So you need to net out for me the things that are the most important for me to think about. What's truly different, a value that's truly important to me. I expect and want you to net it out. And that's the question, really, as a seller, we ought to try to build a value prop for. I want to just revisit a definition of a value prop, because there's lots of them, and not all of them are all that helpful. They're kind of generic too. This is my version, and it calls out some things that I think are particularly important. Let me read it to you. A buyer-focused description of value that demonstrates your knowledge about the customer's experience or challenge and your specific offer to address it, underscored by what differentiates your offer from any other. And I'm leaning on some of those words, the ones in green, for a reason. In order to be buyer focused, I don't need you to tell me about your product. I don't need to know everything you know about your product. I need to understand as a buyer that you know me, that you understand what it is that I'm trying to solve, or the objective I have, or the challenge I have. And then tell me what about your offer specifically addresses my challenges or goals or issues. We can get into a discussion of all the other stuff much later in the process, but if you want my attention in the beginning of our communications, get to the specifics about what matters to me. And in the differentiators, net it out to the one truly unique or truly important to me differentiating value point, and then it would be really great if you actually backed it out. That's from the view of a buyer. Before we go further, I just want to clear up something. As sellers, we want a really short, sweet, and tight statement. And And I'm not saying that that's not necessary. I just think it's very hard to do starting from there. I think you need to build a foundation, and then you get a better shot at pulling out the tight one that has all the right pieces in it. But the reality is that a value prop is a story. That's what it is. And it's the beginning of the conversation when you tell a story to draw the buyer in. So it's not like I'm trying to tell an anecdote or punchy little joke. The length will vary depending upon where you are in the buyer journey and who you're talking to. The other thing is, don't mix up an elevator pitch with a value prop. I think a value prop is a larger statement that encompasses, the buyer objective statement, the offer statement, the differentiators, and then the things you're going to use to back it up. An elevator pitch is us distilling it down to the core elements, right? So it's pulled out of a value prop. And I might really vary my elevator pitch depending on who I'm talking to in the buying team. It's also not a tagline. We might pull the tagline out, but the tagline is more about the organization than necessarily an individual offer or solution, and it's more evocative of something. It's not really telling a story per se. It's either evocative of what you deliver, or it's about something that really resonates for a buyer. And it's a distillation. Overall, we're trying to focus on buyer information. So let's talk about the typical mistakes that get made, because you ought to know what they are so that as you're creating your value prop statement, you don't commit them, or you can fix them as they're happening. The first part is, there's nothing in here about my buyer issues or needs. That's why I think it needs a buyer objective statement. One, as you build your foundation, one or two really good sentences that talk about the buyer's issues or challenges. You can distill that down further later on when you pull your tight statement, but make sure that this is included, because most value props don't include it, and buyers are looking for it. If you're going to talk about a value, you've got to offer specifics. So, most of them don't have it. So you really need to think about, can I put a stake in the ground and say, okay, if I'm going to make a statement that I am going to save you costs, then what's the range of costs you could save me? Or what's the percentage? Or can you quote something specific? I need specifics. Stay away from generic language. Don't try to stuff everything into your buyer statement and your offer statement. Just what's specific to me, the buyer, that I care about. Don't really drag in features into your value prop statement. That's for later on in the sales discussion. By the way, they've already looked at your collateral on your website, and they've already looked at feature stuff and some of the marketing materials there. So don't waste valuable real estate in a value prop statement with features unless it's a feature that nobody on the planet has. And by the way, TikTok, that's a matter of time before somebody copies you anyway, but that's really the only scenario I would see where a feature would appropriately be in a statement. Make sure that your value prop statement is not, when you look in the mirror, you see your own company, your own offer. So this is where you whip out the mirror and you go, okay, am I internally focused or am I externally focused? That's the most important thing. And in terms of differentiators, less is more. It should be provable, it should be real, and it should be either unique or as close to unique as you can get it. Maybe only one or two other players have a version of it, but it's got to be meaningful to the buyer. Less is more is that I say that because a lot of value props get multiple differentiators squished in there, and frankly, I just want one that you can prove that's meaningful to me. The rest of it doesn't really matter that much. So here's a checklist. When you do your draft, here's how you check things out. Is the buyer experience or situation in there? Do I make reference to it? Do I lead with it? Take out all the company speak. There's no company lingo, acronyms, that kind of thing, because that's just not the place for it. Are we talking about customer value? I'm not talking about features. I'm not talking about kind of the details. I'm really focused on value that I can prove. I should focus on what's the most unique about my offer, and I should stick to the specifics. Again, not generic. I want to be able to use some qualitative or quantitative measures to make them real. If I can't find that, maybe I need to put in a different point. My differentiators really need to be true. Don't tell me your customer focus without being able to prove to me, we received the top, Baldrige Award for customer service, or something that makes it real. Otherwise, it's just a fluffy statement. Believable, demonstrable, offer proof. That's your checklist as you're drafting. Do your drafts and then go down this list and say, do I have this? Here's some things that I want to warn you against. Like, this is my list of what I call so what descriptors that I always see in value props. Things like we're most advanced, we're the most technologically advanced, we're cutting edge, those kinds of things. Yeah, so what? Everybody says that. It doesn't really add anything. We're rated best in class or best of breed. I hate best of breed. It's a dog show term. It drives me insane. But the thing is that the only way you could include something like that is if you're quoting a third party objective expert that matters to your buyer, that matters to that market. We're number one. Well, you better be sure that nobody else is saying the same thing, and it's better said by an outside party than by you. One-stop shop. That one drives me crazy. Really? You're a $6 billion corporation. You're a $100 million company. Do you think that one-stop shop is the top 1 to 3 value needs of your buyer? It's very rare. So I think it's also a useless statement. We offer a full suite of services. This one kills me. It's a fancy way of saying we sell a lot of stuff. Yeah, I already know that. I went to your website. Next. We reduce costs, we improve efficiency, we increase market share, those kinds of things. Those are bad, but if you're not going to quantify them in your value prop, then they're just generic fluff. And so quantify it, and if you can't, don't put it in. Same thing with things like we're the industry leader. Again, I had a client that, wanted me to check for value prop language, and 9 of their competitors, and I compared to my client, and out of the 10, 7 of them were claiming to be the industry leader. Well, somebody's not telling the truth. So that's kind of crazy, right? We're customer focused. That's a generic one I see a lot. And when I ask for proof, it's very rare I get it. So you really can't say that unless it's really important to your buyer as a top 1 to 3 values, and you have a way to quantify it, and you have proof from an objective third party. We are your partner. We are your trusted advisor. You know what? That's hopeful. I don't think that that's useful unless it's, again, stated by an outsider. So I just think that that's something that a customer gets to say, not you. So, and it's done to death. My current favorite, and it's really a technology-focused one, is purpose-built. We have a purpose-built solution. We have a purpose-built network. We have a purpose-built. Well, isn't anything that you create for a buyer or for a target market, isn't there a purpose to it? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous language, don't use it. So make sure that these don't sneak in, and if they do, take them out. So let's go to the differentiator part, right? I think you probably need 1 or 2 true differentiators. One of them is going to be specific about what really matters to the buyer in terms of value points in their head when they're looking at different vendors. And here's some examples of the kinds of things they may be thinking about, right? And you need to know, and you need to figure out and research, I'm focused on a director of marketing, and maybe increase market share is the thing that they really care about. And so I want to be able to create, so I might use that as a value driver. I might quantify how often or how much we do customers working with us experience anywhere from 5 to 7% increase in market share. I mean, it's got to be true. You got to be able to back it up. You got to be able to offer the proof, and then you've got to be able to have either a testimonial, a third-party quote, or something to back it up from a proof point of view. I wouldn't use all of them, only the ones that are relevant to the buyer you're targeting with the value prop. Again, you may have to do versions, that's okay. But these are the things that typically rise to the top. There are others. There may be others that are more specific to your solution. That's cool too, but this gives you a place to start. And then we want to quantify each value driver. And here's some examples of some things that you can use. Obviously, customer results rule. But if it's a new offering and you don't have customers yet, then you could use things like statistics from an industry expert, or maybe some outside, industry relevant survey or research results that quantify that this value driver is important. If you've gotten any awards for that, for something that represents that value driver, that's a good one to put in. Any kind of documented improvements or reductions that you can quote and that you can offer in the form of, pushing them to a testimonial or to case study, all great ways to quantify. Again, those are some of the similar things you can use for proof. So depending upon how you quantify it, these, you can also use some of these to prove. Factoids from industry sources, your case studies, those kinds of things. So not only am I just making a differentiator, But beyond my value prop statement, I'm ready and able to offer, here are the key value drivers that I can then steer my conversation to, and then I can really move into the next step, which is to quantify and prove it. So I can almost do like a step 2 to the value prop statement if the conversation continues. I think that's super important. The thing you want to make sure you do is that you pivot to value, okay? Relevance to a specific need. Do you really understand your buyer? If you're really thinking just title, I want you to think more about buyer personas. See if your marketing organization has buyer personas that flesh out how the buyer thinks. Why do they buy? When do they buy? What stops them from buying? What motivates them? It's behavior based. That'll help you with your language. You want to make sure that you include in there, when you're thinking differentiators, is what's the impact on their organization if they buy from you. It's got to be tangible business benefits. If there's potential risk that is top of mind, maybe in your value prop statement you address that. Or if there's a big reward type, it depends on what they're really concerned the most about. But you want to help them in some way with these specifics so that they can justify a decision on you, right? And again, I can't say it enough. I'm beating the drum. True differentiation, true, real, as unique as you can make it, and provable. Those are the key things. So that in a nutshell is how I'm helping you with some tips to gear up and really start to deliver really good buyer value prop statements. Don't be afraid to write a long one to really get all the pieces in, and then you can distill it down into that punchy one or two line statement. I want to also offer you, I've written a book on this topic, Value Propositions That Sell. It includes templates to help you get to a truly buyer-focused value prop. There's a couple of good case studies in there so you can see exactly how it's been done by an enterprise company and a small business. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the virtual summit.